Welcome, everyone. Today, we will together explore a unique and mysterious Soviet war machine from World War II, the SU-100Y. Have you ever heard of a giant box tank with a powerful naval gun, capable of blowing away any fortifications and threatening even the German Tigers? This is not just a single prototype that has survived to this day, but also a mark of an era of experimental tank design. Did this giant actually participate in the fierce battle to defend Moscow? What was its true strength on the battlefield? Let's uncover the secrets of the SU-100Y right now. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next exciting videos. The SU-100Y, also known as the Soviet box tank, began development during the Winter War against Finland. The initial purpose of this project was to create a self-propelled gun capable of destroying heavily fortified enemy positions. To achieve this goal, Soviet engineers decided to equip a powerful 130mm naval gun onto the robust chassis of the T-100 heavy tank. Although primarily designed to eliminate defensive structures, the superior firepower of the SU-100Y also meant that it could easily take out any Nazi German tanks if they unfortunately came into its sights. In terms of design, the SU-100Y possessed a relatively simple structure with flat armor plates, was not equipped with a machine gun, and even lacked hatches for the crew. However, by the time the SU-100Y completed its development, the Winter War had ended, significantly reducing the need for this 60-ton heavy fighting machine. Nevertheless, according to reports, the only SU-100Y prototype ever built was brought back into service and participated in the defense of Moscow in 1941. Some sources even suggest that this powerful machine continued to serve throughout the remainder of the war. In the context of the Winter War, the Soviet Union recognized an urgent need for a tank capable of destroying strong fortifications. The requirement was for a vehicle carrying a 152mm or 203mm caliber gun. To quickly deploy vehicles to the front lines, Factory No. 185 designed a turret housing a 152mm gun for the T-100, designated the T-100Z. However, this project was rated lower than the KV-2 and was not put into production. Another proposal was the T-100X, a vehicle combining a self-propelled gun and an engineering vehicle. However, the designers at Factory No. 185 decided to build a dedicated self-propelled gun named the T-100Y, or SU-100Y. Complex ordering and cancellation orders occurred between the factories before the SU-100Y hull was delivered at the end of February 1940. The SU-100Y was completed on March 14, 1940. Ironically, the Winter War had ended the day before. The SU-100Y was built on the hull of the second T-100 prototype. The turret and related systems of the T-100 were removed and replaced with a high-velocity 130mm B-13 naval gun. This gun was extremely powerful, especially for its time. Originally a naval weapon used on cruisers and in coastal defense emplacements, it possessed more than enough destructive power for most armored vehicles the Soviets would encounter in the war. With the appropriate ammunition, the B-13 could penetrate 160mm of armor at a range of 2,000 meters. At closer ranges, it could pierce 200mm of steel. However, this was less important in practice, as the primary purpose of the SU-100Y was to reduce fortifications to rubble. This is where the B-13 truly excelled. Its high explosive shell contained 2.5 kilograms of explosives, making it very effective against infantry, unarmored vehicles, and, of course, bunkers. Armor was fitted around the gun, forming a boxy superstructure on top of the hull. This boxy structure was 60mm thick on the front and sides, although it was arranged with very little angling, giving it a very square appearance. This lack of angling reduced the effective armor thickness but increased the internal space. The SU-100Y was built on the chassis of the T-100 tank. The T-100 was a large tank designed by Factory No. 185 at the Bolshevik plant in Leningrad in the late 1930s, intended as a potential successor to the rather weak T-35. It directly competed with the SMK, a tank similar in appearance and size, also from the Kirov plant in Leningrad. The SMK was named after the communist politician Sergei M. Kirov. Both the T-100 and the SMK had 2 turrets, fewer than the T-35's 5, but perhaps still a bit much. The use of multiple turrets was somewhat of a Soviet obsession at the time, partly due to its theoretical capabilities, more and better guns, and for propaganda effect. In reality, however, a multi-turreted tank was either much larger and heavier, or had thinner armor to compensate for weight. Crew workload was increased, and the commander had to maintain control over the tank's direction and the operation of the turrets. On both, the larger turret mounted a 76.2 mm gun, and the smaller secondary turret housed a 45 mm gun. The T-100 weighed 64 tons, had a crew of 7, and was extremely long. Due to its immense size, the tank had poor mobility and unimpressive armor. Around this time, the Soviets began to listen to designers who knew that multi-turreted tanks were not effective. On their own initiative, the SMK design team created another heavy tank in parallel with the SMK, but with only 1 turret. It was smaller than the SMK and had thicker armor while being 8 tons lighter. This single-turreted tank later became the KV-1. The Soviets sent the SMK and T-100 prototypes to Finland for combat trials, where their large size, cumbersome performance, and overly complex armament limited their effectiveness. Ironically, neither the T-100 nor the SMK went into mass production. That honor went to the KV-1. Although not satisfied with the T-100, several vehicles were proposed based on it, denoted by the suffixes X, Y, and Z. The SU-100Y had a rather unusual crew arrangement, consisting of a driver, a telegraph operator, 2 loaders, a commander, and a gunner. The commander assisted the gunner by controlling the vertical traverse of the gun. 2 loaders were necessary due to the large, 2-part ammunition. A rather peculiar point is that the SU-100Y lacked any hatches on the roof of its boxy superstructure, which would likely have severely limited the crew's quality of life and situational awareness. The crew would enter and exit the fighting compartment through a door at the rear of the superstructure. It also lacked any form of close-range defensive armament, with no coaxial or hull-mounted machine guns. These shortcomings are not surprising, as this was only a pre-production vehicle. It is reasonable to believe that such features would have been added if it had entered mass production. This single example was quite rudimentary in features, but this is understandable for a prototype vehicle. At the rear of the SU-100Y was a Michelin GAM-34 engine, an extremely powerful engine by 1940 standards. This engine was a modified version of the Michelin AM-34 aircraft engine, which powered some of the Soviet Union's largest aircraft, including the Tupolev AN-T-20 and the Kalinin K-7. This 46.9-liter V12 diesel engine produced 890 horsepower and could propel this 60-ton self-propelled gun to a maximum speed of 22 miles per hour, 35 kilometers per hour, on paved roads and 10 miles per hour, 16 kilometers per hour, in rough terrain. Regarding weight, the exact figure varies from 55 to nearly 70 tons depending on the source. The end of the Winter War and its lengthy procurement process meant the SU-100Y was not ordered into mass production. The sole example was moved to the Kubinka proving grounds in the middle of 1940. From here, the story becomes unclear. There is a common belief that in late 1941, the SU-100Y was brought to Moscow to defend the city against the German forces. It is thought that it then went on to fight at Kursk and other battles throughout the war. On the other hand, some say that the vehicle spent most of World War II in trials or storage. Logistically, it is unrealistic for the SU-100Y to have fought throughout the war. Without clear evidence, it is very difficult to verify which series of events is true. It is highly likely that the SU-100Y did not serve throughout World War II, as consumable supplies such as ammunition, maintenance materials, and spare parts would have been very difficult to obtain for the single machine. However, given the extremely desperate situation of Moscow's defense and the city's close proximity to Kubinka, it is possible that the SU-100Y truly did participate in that specific battle. The SU-100Y survived the war and can still be found at the Kubinka Tank Museum today. It holds significant importance not only as the only SU-100Y ever built but also as the last surviving remnant of the T-100 heavy tank project. So, we have together explored the unique SU-100Y, a testament to the bold design thinking of the Soviet Union during the turbulent period of World War II. Although only a single prototype was ever built, the SU-100Y still leaves a profound mark due to its incredible firepower from the 130mm naval gun, its impressive penetration capabilities, and the story of its participation, though not fully verified, in the battle to defend Moscow. Could the SU-100Y have become a formidable force if mass-produced? Please share your opinions in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, share this video, and subscribe to our channel to watch other fascinating content. Goodbye and see you again.